so much for joining us on this panel discussion. I'm joined by Disha Govender, Head of Law at Ndufuna Kwazi, and Sheila Madikane, Head of Reclaim the City, an organization in Cape Town. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and then we'll get chatting.
My name is Sheila Madikane. I'm an activist of Reclaim the City, fight for housing at the center of the CBD in the inner city.
And I'm Disha Govender. I'm an attorney at Ndufuna Kwazi. It's an organization that focuses on sort of urban land justice issues, specifically the urban land justice question around the desegregation of central Cape Town, as it were, and the fight to ensure that people have access to the inner city.
How do you understand spatial inequality in Cape Town? How does it impact you? What is your experiences of it?
My experiences of the impact in Cape Town is that for the poor and working class people that doesn't have houses, the people are in structure of a bit of struggling because of the government doesn't take care or take note of the poor and working class people. And the inner city got the impact of not having poor and working class people in the inner city. The only thing that they want in the inner city, it's people that are well located with the richness. The developers that are the people that are buying the land, the buildings, those are the people that are maybe, that I can call it, that they are like a part in our way of not having what we want.
And I think it's rooted in the historic dispossession of land of black people of this country. And so when you talk about spatial inequality, you cannot talk about it without talking about the specific context and history that South Africa has of that land dispossession, and how our cities were shaped and formed in a very specific way to segregate people, and that a big part of spatial justice requires an undoing of that spatial pattern. And spatial inequality has real impacts on people in varying ways, whether it is people who are working and have lived in well-located areas like the Atlantic Seaboard and the CBD, but have had to live under really problematic conditions. People still living in what was previously considered the old storerooms in flats that don't have proper sanitation or separate entrance kind of vibes, where and space which was really exclusively for sort of white people. And so spatial inequality encompasses all of those dynamics that present itself in the urban form. So spatial justice looks to kind of undo all of that.
I want to talk a little bit about the Tafelberg case specifically. Can you introduce us, give us an introduction to the case?
People before, as our mothers that was working in the CBD, in Sea Point, Green Point areas, they were fighting for Tafelberg. And some of them retired, some of them passed on, some of them went home to the Eastern Cape. So we, as people that stayed behind in Sea Point, the CBD, we did carry on fighting, because so we then take the movement up, and as we did took the movement up, we met the people of Ndufuna Kwazi Law Center that we didn't know them. If we were alone, it maybe didn't cost us to go so far by more important places. They didn't want us to have that school, and they sold the school for the Phyllis Jewel School that was 135 million, where the court decided they must reverse the money back so that they can then still debate and have justice about the selling of the Tafelberg site. And it even went to the Supreme Court in Bloemfontein. We also want to live next to our workplaces so that we don't work up 3 o'clock in the location. You need to travel those long distance hours so that you have to be at work 7:30.
The Tafelberg site in Sea Point is a well-located site, and it's publicly owned land. It's owned by the provincial government. And there were even studies done and requests made even within government that that site be used for affordable housing, for social housing. And promises had been made to people who had been fighting for affordable housing in the area. And yet then a decision was taken to sell that specific site as opposed to using it for the development of well-located affordable housing. And so the case actually started as a result of trying to stop that sale. So initially the aim was to stop the transfer of ownership to the entity that purchased the property, pending a review of the decision of the state to sell that land to begin with. When you're dealing with the housing crisis that Sheila had mentioned, when you're dealing with people in desperate need for dignified homes, it is nonsensical to be selling state land, especially well-located state land on which it is feasibly possible to develop, in this case, social housing. The case started as a result of, like I say, the sale of this well-located piece of land, and I think through the case, and what you have seen through the case is obviously a challenge to the way in which the state just disposes of its land when it can be used for service delivery and necessary service delivery. The case is a very long history, and as Sheila mentioned, we were successful in stopping the sale and reviewing the state's decision to dispose of the land, and that decision has been appealed, and we've argued the appeal in the Supreme Court of Appeal, and we're currently waiting for a decision from.
You bring up some really important points, both of you, in your respective experiences. But I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit about, and in closing, really, talking a little bit about the importance of organizing and activism and using legal rights to not only to protest, not only to organize, but also to use it in the court.
For the law to be made real for people, for the Constitution to be made real for people, people need to be able to use the law to make change. But the law in itself is never just enough. And what we saw in sort of this matter of the Tafelberg case is people using the law, having lawyers like those of us here at NU Law Centre in bringing sort of legal challenges, but that was coupled with massive amounts of advocacy work that was done in soliciting, firstly in making the public aware of this big issue of how the government is sort of selling land and why that's problematic, of highlighting the issue of the need for well-located affordable housing, of getting the public involved in commenting on why this specific site, for instance, shouldn't be sold off, and participating in those processes. And so it is with activism that you actually raise the awareness of the issues, and you actually take those issues forward by putting pressure on the state to make a change.
We had to make that noise, and we had to let people know that there is such a thing that's happening around them, because of most of the people, I think, was not aware that there is empty public spaces that belongs to them. And they didn't maybe know that in that public spaces that the government are ruling, spaces that we as poor working class people need those spaces. And those spaces are spaces that the government was supposed, the spaces that we went to, that we know that those are government spaces, that they are hiring it out, they're renting it out for such a little amount that doesn't even make the amount of that when they're renting out an apartment for a month, then that is the money of the apartment. It's even more than that space of the golf course that they are renting it out for a year. Then you as a person, as a human being that needs to give out such a lot of amount of money, and where they are gaining little money out of such a big space where they could have given to people.
We've had the help and assistance of professionals There's a lot of technical issues in relation to this case when you're talking about feasibilities, the feasibility of actually developing housing, social housing on the site. So while it's not necessarily movement parties, but actual individuals themselves willing to give and lend their professional expertise to be able to, assist us in analyzing the feasibility studies in order to make the comments that we did. We have those experts actually did affidavits, supporting affidavits in the court case. And I think, as the struggle and the fight for the Tafelberg site, which in itself is a symbol of the fight for spatial justice, especially in Cape Town, continues, you see more and more people, lending support and solidarity in some way, lending their voices, including people living in Sea Point as well, residents and who came together to actually support and who wrote submissions in support of the site being used for social housing. So a fight like this is never done on one's own. It's a big fight, and it does require actually all of us to really be committed to achieving the equality that Sheila said we're all entitled to. And so yes, definitely a lot of gratitude to those who have supported us along the way and who continue to support us in this fight.
Wow, that was really amazing to listen to and to learn from your on-the-ground experience, not only in the court but on the streets and just the everyday struggle and grit that it takes, because it's not an easy job. But I want to commend you for doing it and also for having the time to come and speak to us today.
Yes.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to close. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and I'll see you again. Thank you.